What? Michael said as they left the police station, voice littered with mockery. No thank you for your service or great job out there? The station was large and strangely empty. Pretty much every time Michael had come by to the station to turn in a perp or get information for work, cops were usually buzzing about. It was an odd sensation, and for some reason, it made him feel a little uncomfortable. Where were all the police, and what could they all possibly be working on to make this place feel so barren? Though that didn't unsettle him nearly so much as the irate woman glowering before him. Perhaps he should cease frustrating her. They had finished their job already. Now all Michael had to do was go back to the guild hall, fill out the correct paperwork, and finally get paid. Then he'd hopefully never have to see this woman again. But somehow he couldn't stop himself from making this peacekeeper as miserable as possible before they parted ways. Call it just desserts for how wretched being around her had been.
I'm a peacekeeper, the woman said. Protector of the country, defender of the innocent, and a bastion of truth and goodwill. As such, I make it my mission to uphold all the values the Titanian Church holds dear. That includes never lying.
Jordan Moore was the young woman Michael had spent the last 5 days working with on a case. Working with was definitely an exaggeration. Jordan had spent nearly this whole week ordering him about like he was hired help. Which, if he had to be fair, he technically was. She was a peacekeeper, a member of the group that touted themselves as the most elite warriors in the whole country of Talum. As such, their missions were almost always dangerous, more often than not life-threatening. They looked down on people like Michael who used their talents in a guild to help common folks. Guild work could get dangerous, but many times their missions involved finding a lost cat or helping some local lower school students promote their bake sale. Guild work allowed Michael the opportunity to help people on both a macro and a micro scale. Scales in which this recently finished mission had been. Oh, really? Michael said. And how exactly would you have gotten our Mark's location or learned the correct passphrase he needed to hear to think we were friendly without me? Jordan didn't deign that with a response. Looked like she actually took the whole not lying business seriously. Without Michael's connections across the city of Linick, including those of a less savory stature, the peacekeepers would have not been able to find their target. Some mafia thug who had had a habit of loaning money to people in need, then forcing an impossible interest rate at a too frequent compounding contract upon them. So, someone worthy of getting kicked off the streets. Evidently, Jordan had been working the case for several weeks before realizing she alone could go no further, and that she needed outside help. Being a fearsome peacekeeper was all well and good for the general public, who would generally bow their heads and thank them for their service. For those who ran the underworld of the city, peacekeepers would be lucky to get the time of day from them. Hence, why she needed a more personable and definitively more friendly touch to this case. Here, Jordan said, tapping a screen in the left arm of her peacekeeper uniform. A bland utilitarian suit made from stark whites and black. The only variety to it was the belt around her waist and the compartment that held a screen on one arm.
There's your credits. I'd say it was a pleasure doing business with you, but we already talked about my lying.
Michael checked his wristband, which notified him of the 2,000 credits he'd just received. Man, that amount made the time he'd spent with her almost worth it. Which was too bad. 5 days ago, when she'd filled out the contract with his guild, Sacred Skies, he hadn't been too pessimistic. Sure, he'd never had a great experience working with peacekeepers before, but Jordan had been different. Instead of the gruff, more intense people at least 10 years older than him, Jordan seemed far more inexperienced. She was a year younger than him, 23, and still had a light in her eye that suggested she hadn't given up faith in humanity. Not to mention her looks. Brown skin, warm and rich. Deep brown hair worked on so her natural curls were straight and smooth. An ample backside, which Michael could greatly appreciate with the occasional glance. Then she opened her mouth and ruined everything. Now the only stirring she evoked from him was annoyance. Thank you, oh so honorable peacekeeper, Michael said with a flamboyant bow. I wish you luck in your next mission. which hopefully wouldn't require help from the guild. You'll know all about it, Jordan groaned.
Since Sacred Skies will be helping with it too.
Michael blinked. What is it? Jordan rounded on him, mouth in a sneer.
How dumb are you? The feast for the Thanksgiving to the Flame Bearers is a week from today.
So?
They're bringing in all hands on deck to watch over the feast. Peacekeepers and the police have been making sure everything will run smoothly for over a week now. They're even bringing in guild help and the Talon Guard.
At least that answered the question of the missing cops. It was still strange, however. Of all the festivals that took place every year, why did this particular one have so much effort put into it? As strange as that was, his mind moved on from the thought and annoyingly clung to something else Jordan had said. Even. As if the guilds and the Talon Guard, a military group used for large-scale insurrections, were any less valuable than the Peacekeepers. But of course she would feel that way. It seemed all Peacekeepers did. Oh, don't worry, Michael said. I'm not working that event. She raised an eyebrow.
Oh?
Yeah, I have another, even more important job to do. And anything that would keep him away from her for the time being was definitely more important than overseeing a religious feast Michael had no part in.
Good then,
Jordan said.
The fewer of you, the better. I'd wish you luck on your next mission, but...
Yeah, I know, Michael said, waving his hand as he turned to walk away. Lying and all that. What to choose, what to choose. Michael lay in his bed, swiping the screen of his tablet upwards as he perused possible jobs in one hand, while he fixed his afro with a pick in the other. It would help if any of them were actually good. Perhaps he was being unfair. The jobs his clients brought them weren't necessarily bad or unimportant in usual circumstances, but it seemed unlikely that Sacred Skies guild leader Fukimo would accept being a guest of honor at a local middle school's presentation for the importance of the different sects of the Titanian Church, or for gathering groceries for geriatric clients to be good excuses for abandoning the rest of the guild, which was most likely working on preparations for the coming festival's feast. At least he'd been able to sneak into Sacred Skies Manor unseen, aided by the late time of night and his special entrance and exit through the extravagant edifice's domed roof, so no one could pester him about helping with the festival. Michael blinked, only then realizing that the screens had seemed to blur. Instead of rows of job requests, what appeared to be a fuzzy white screen stood before him. Michael's next blink was longer, more deliberate, and details came into focus. He yawned and placed the tablet and pick aside, nuzzling his cheek into his soft pillow. Michael could always find a job in the morning after a good night's sleep. It had been a long 5 days with Jordan Moore. He'd work better in the morning, in the peace and quiet of his lovely home. That was, if he'd actually been able to rest comfortably. Despite his exhaustion, he tossed and turned for hours afterwards. Try all he might, the job at the festival loomed over him. If he didn't find a job important enough for Fukimo, then it looked like his sorry ass would be back together with Jordan Moore. A loud pounding on his door jolted him. He was groggy with a line of drool pooling in his pillow.
Your sorry ass still in bed?
An annoyed voice called from the other side of the door.
Get up. Boss wants to talk with you.
Michael groaned. Of course she did. He turned his tablet back on, squinting at the screen, brighter than the sun peeking through his blinds. After a flurry of a scroll, it hadn't appeared any new exciting jobs had been posted. The knock came again. Michael! I'm coming, Michael said. Chill your tits. Michael quickly dressed and opened the door, revealing Hissa standing just beyond the doorway, hip cocked to the side, arms folded with a single finger tapping her bicep.
I'll have you know, Hissa said, my tits are the chillest thing about me.
Michael cracked a smile. Despite being the most petite member of Sacred Skies, perhaps because of that, Hissa was always quick with a quip. Her folded Nicaraguan eyes were narrowed, a little smirk curling her cheek. She clearly wanted Michael to respond in kind and keep the banter going. With the majority of his brain cells working on a way to stay away from the festival, however, Michael didn't have anything for her. So, where's Fumiko? Michael asked. Hissa's smirk dropped.
Front garden, enjoying the cool morning breeze.
She was always crazy like that. Any idea what she wants to talk with me about?
Probably about the festival coming up.
Damn. His steps were slower than Hissa's. Despite him being well over a foot taller than her, she didn't hurry him along. She'd likely get roped into the festival job as well, if she hadn't already. They left the long hallway, where all the members of Sacred Skies who lived in the manor, so most of Michael's guildmates stayed. The atrium was practically empty. No one stood around the tall walls admiring the many paintings placed between large columns. The other side of the manor, which held conference rooms and meeting places for clients, had no foot traffic. Not a single person even enjoyed the hot tub the size of a pool near the entrance. Honestly, that wasn't too strange, as most people used that to unwind at the end of a long day. The only people in the atrium was Sacred Sky's most loyal receptionist, Kayla, and a middle-aged woman standing before Kayla's desk, voice loud and frantic.
The front door is this way,
Hissa said. Too bad, my feet are taking me here, Michael said, heading the opposite direction of where Hissa pointed. He approached Kayla, who gave Michael a wearied smile, and the woman. Everything all right here?
No, not at all,
the woman said, scanning Michael's body until it landed on the interior of his right forearm, the location of his mark.
Holy Windweaver, not at all.
The woman refused to make eye contact for long. Michael had always found it a little strange, but he'd gotten used to it. He'd better have, as this was how he'd been treated his whole life in his memory. His mark was a tattoo which displayed what type of wielder he was. Titans in their eternal wisdom came to certain special children and blessed them with their own power. Michael had been blessed by an air-type Titan, thus gifting him with powers over wind. It made him quite powerful, very rare amongst the people of the Republic of Talum, and also capable of working at this guild in the first place. So long as he provided for the common person. So, what's your request? Michael said. If it's important, I can probably work on it right away.
Michael,
Hissa said, voice low.
Oh, bless you, thankful. I mean, thank you, blessed Windweaver,
the woman said.
It's my daughter. She's gone missing.
Michael's eyes widened. Yeah, that would definitely count as an important mission.
I'm so sorry, ma'am,
Hissa said.
In most cases, this should be brought to the police first. They can come to us on your behalf if they need our assistance.
But I already went to them earlier,
the woman said, mouth quivering.
They took so long to make a report, then told me to come here. They're so busy, you see, with the coming festival. Said the best luck I'd have getting someone to work on it now is if I go to you.
Michael turned to Kayla. She finished making her contract?
Almost,
Kayla said.
The only problem is,
I can't pay much,
the woman said, her voice breaking.
It's hard to make ends meet. Most of my credits go to Rachel's tuition. She goes to Linick Technical University. Can you believe it? She even got an internship at Nadar.
Michael whistled. Linick Tech was one of the harder schools to get into in their province. Neria and Nadar was one of the largest, most demanding tech companies in all of Talum.
What was the last time you saw her?
Hissa asked.
Yesterday afternoon, the woman said. Before her shift at Nadar. She has to work late, you know, what with morning classes. But she never came home and she hasn't returned any of my calls or messages.
She have any friends or family she might have talked to?
No. She goes to school, comes home, then goes to her internships, then comes back home.
The woman wrapped her arms around herself.
She's always with me when she's at home.
Hissa eyed Michael. Truthfully, they'd seen reports like this before. An overburdened student coupled with a likely overbearing parent who probably couldn't take the constant stress of work, school, and family. Twice, Michael had taken a missing persons case, all to find out that the college kid was at his secret girlfriend's apartment and had taken his wristband off so he couldn't answer the messages. Or to find the girl had simply gotten too drunk the previous night with her friends and was still deep asleep on the bar's floor the next morning. Still, if it got him out of working the festival even that much longer, make it out to 20 credits, Michael said. What? Both Hissa and Kayla said. Got paid big time on yesterday's job, Michael said. Don't need to worry about funds for a while. Michael, Hissa said, voice now slow and low. What's more important? Michael said. Placing tables around a park or finding this woman's missing daughter?
Oh, bless you, gracious Windweaver, the woman said, eyes misting. Bless you so very much.
No, bless you, my kind woman. Michael adopted a serious expression. Kayla, please finish writing up that contract and take her to the first meeting room. I'll be right there. But first, I need to tell Fumiko about my important new job. All right, I'll leave you now, Fumiko said, hands on her hips. It was always a wonder that even while vexed, she made every motion elegant and pristine. Every bit the professional demeanor a leader of one of Talim's largest guilds should have. The moment this job is finished, you will join the rest of us in the preparations for the festival. Your confidence in me makes my heart flutter, Michael said, putting on a light tone and placing his hands over his heart. But this woman's daughter is missing. How quickly do you think I can solve this? Fumiko's folded eyes narrowed, then glanced at the door behind Michael. The worried mother, his new client, waited inside. After finding Fumiko in the glorious garden in front of Sacred Sky's palace, Michael had told her the situation. She wasn't as openly against the job as Hassie, but she was well aware of the previous missing person jobs Michael had conducted in the past, as evident by the way her mouth curled down a fraction whenever he mentioned the new job, and by the way she'd followed him all the way back to the meeting room, telling him how the governor's office itself requested all hands on deck for the festival. Too bad all that went in through one ear and out the other. As quickly as the guild and that missing person needs, Fumiko said. She then turned and walked away, her sleek jet black hair swaying, almost sheening in the light. Finally, Michael entered the meeting room. His client's back was to the door, sitting at a desk. She turned as the door opened, her eyes, laden with darkened bags beneath them, widened as he approached. Michael sat down across from her, pulled out his tablet, and opened her contract. Anything you'd like to add to this?
Just this,
the woman, Clarice, as written in the contract, said, leaning forward with her right arm held out. The arm held her wristband. Michael tapped a setting to receive information from nearby tech, then placed his tablet atop Clarice's wristband. A picture appeared on Michael's screen. A woman a couple years younger than him, beaming in a park as strawberry blonde hair fell down to her shoulders, deep green eyes matching the foliage behind her. Is this your most recent picture of Rachel? Michael asked. Clarice nodded.
Taken in the summer. It was the last time she had any free time in her busy schedule. We walked around Glen Park and even did a little shopping.
That smile looked like it reached Rachel's eyes. Nothing forced and soulless like others he'd seen. In this picture, Rachel looked genuinely happy to enjoy an afternoon with her mother. Anything could change in 4 to 6 months. Something else appeared next to the photo. A long line of messages between Rachel and Clarice. After a quick scan, Rachel hadn't failed to respond to a single message until last night. The first of many unanswered messages from Clarice began at 12:47 p.m. I'm guessing this was made after her shift? Michael asked.
Her shift ended at 11, Clarice said. She's normally home by 11:30, depending on if buses are on time. I started to get worried around 12:30 and, as you can see, called and messaged her many times. All of the calls went straight to voicemail. Clarice hiccuped, then wiped her eye. I decided if she hadn't come home by the morning or hadn't responded by then, I'd go to the police.
Michael didn't need to hear any more. He rose. Thank you for this. You can spend as long as you want in the atrium. I can't promise this will be quick, but I have an idea of how I can find her. Clarice placed her hand over her breast.
Thank you, kind Windweaver. And please, Bring my baby girl home.
Just can't stay away, can you?
Officer Puck said, glancing up from the files on her tablet. You know me, Michael said, sitting opposite the officer uninvited. Can't stay away. It's why I love to moonlight as a cop.
They'd kick you out of training in a week, gift or no.
Michael smirked. Yeah, the freedom Guilds provided was unparalleled. Thank the Titans they'd blessed him and made him a wielder.
So, what else do you need?
Officer Puck said, typing on her tablet with one hand and brushing a stray blonde hair with another.
Believe it or not, I'm actually pretty busy at the moment.
Like everyone else? Michael said, glancing around the mostly barren room. Very few cops were at their desks, and those that were gave Michael even less eye contact than Officer Puck. Where is everyone?
Either doing rounds,
Officer Puck said,
or at Glen Park.
Michael groaned. Is it for the festival?
Yes, it's for the festival.
Why's the whole city on it?
Maybe it's a special anniversary or something. I don't know. The governor's office hasn't told us shit. What do you need this time?
Michael was almost hurt. Normally he could stall for a few more minutes with Officer Puck. Looked like this festival job was getting on her nerves. Access to a civilian's personal device, Michael said. Need her location. ASAP.
Contract?
Puck didn't even glance at the contract as Michael transferred it to her device. She was a few years his senior, but Michael had been with Sacred Skies working cases longer than she'd been on the force. Her very first mission, in fact, had required Michael's aid. In a way, he'd mentored her and she trusted him. It thankfully provided fewer legal loopholes to jump through in order to finish his missions.
Done,
Officer Puck said, drawing her tablet back to her side of the desk. Michael put in Rachel's personal information, like her ID number and wristband identification given by Clarice. An error occurred.
What the hell?
Michael mumbled.
What's up?
Officer Puck said. What do you make of this? Michael showed her the tablet. She frowned.
Try again.
Michael did, to the same result.
Hold on,
Officer Puck said. She put the information into her own tablet. The same error message popped up.
That's not right.
No, if a wristband had been turned off, they could still find its location. If it had been destroyed, the message would have indicated its destruction. But an error like this meant that either the tablets or Rachel's wristband couldn't connect to the network. With how connected all Talon was, one would have to be deep underground to lose connection, or be surrounded by tech which actively distorted the system and even the space around it.
What is this job for again?
Officer Puck said. A missing persons job, Michael said.
Another one?
No, not really. My client came to you this morning, but you all told her to come to us. Officer Puck's tongue peeked out the corner of her mouth as she frantically typed on her tablet. She read a document for a few seconds, then shook her head.
That's what I thought, she said. We only did that with the first report. 2 more have come in since then.
Michael's stomach plummeted. 3 missing persons in a day?
Doesn't look like any of them are connected with the other, and the age ranges 20 years.
There could be any number of reasons for this. All 3 decided that they were going to burn their old lives away and throw themselves into the breeze where none could find them. All in the same night. Maybe each of them led a secret life and were actually in communication with one another and decided to run away together in an unorthodox throuple romance. Or the more likely answer, they were actually missing. Michael's mission may actually be legitimate. Rachel works an internship at Nadar, Michael said, leaning forward. She was likely heading to the bus stop before she was taken.
These other 2...
Officer Puck! A loud, deep voice boomed. What do you think you're... Chief Johnson burst from his office, then paused as he looked at Michael. Michael had liked to think that over the years the 2 of them had built up a friendly rivalry. Chief Johnson wasn't quite as dark as Michael, nor as tall, but his musculature was far more impressive, as was the thick beard and mustache surrounding his lips. Michael beamed. Chief Johnson scowled. What is it this time? Chief Johnson said.
The missing persons case, Chief, Officer Puck said. Michael's able to work on it.
While you're not, Chief Johnson said. Back to work, officer. If we don't get those logistics in by 3, the governor's office is going to call our budget into questioning again.
Sir, Officer Puck said, getting back to work.
And you, Chief Johnson said, glaring at Michael. They haven't dragged you into this festival mess yet? No, Michael said. I think this is a little more important. Chief Johnson sighed. Damn straight. He expanded his size-changing tablet from the length and width of a fingernail all the way to the scope of his head, tapped it for several seconds, then gestured for Michael to come over, in order that, for once, Michael followed without comment. Here's access to the city's camera feed, Chief Johnson said. From last night, 8 p.m. to 13 a.m. To the best of our knowledge, this is the time frame those people went missing. Thanks, Michael said, turning and walking away.
If I hear anything else, Officer Puck whispered, I'll let you know.
Sounds good, Michael said. What are you still doing? Chief Johnson yelled. We're busy here, and you should be too. Whoa, this seems healthy, a newcomer said, opening the door, which allowed natural light to split the darkness Michael had surrounded himself with. Michael groaned, then paused the videos. What do you want? I'm busy. I want to know about your case, Lewis said, sliding into the room. I heard it's another missing persons case. And this one's likely legit too. Lewis doubled back. You serious? Would I have to do this for a simple runaway? Michael gestured to the room. The walls of this particular conference room had more screens than walls, with at least 9 monitors on the walls. Michael was able to surround himself with more than 24 different video feeds. He had an algorithm running to recognize the bodies, and particularly the faces of Rachel and the 2 others on the police reports. It wasn't perfect. It had flagged some people who looked similar, but were not the people on the reports. But Michael had used this algorithm before, so he knew it would eventually pick up the correct faces. This is a lot of ground to cover for one person, Lewis said. I'm looking for 3 now, Michael said. That wall's dedicated to Rachel and is focusing on Natter's building and the surrounding areas. Her shift should be ending soon, so I can hopefully find her route in a minute. These others are going a little faster. I'm more or less waiting on the body recognition scanners to pick up something legit on them. I meant, Lewis began, running his hands through his oily brown hair, that this is a lot of ground for you to cover alone. Everyone else is too busy for this, apparently, Michael grumbled. It's so dumb, Lewis said. I'm barely doing anything at the park. They gave me my hour dinner break, but I'm doing as much work now as I was then. Dinner? What time is it? Well, early dinner, late lunch. Anyway, I'll see if... The screen's looking at Nattar pinged. Rachel, wearing a white long-sleeved button shirt and gray work skirt, walked down the steps from Nattar's exit, then went south. Michael scooted over, focusing on the cameras to the south of Nattar, as she left the camera's field of vision. As much surveillance as Linick had, not every inch could be recorded. Too many resources would have to be allocated to the video files and personnel watching over everything. Even with the most valuable areas, and in some cases the most dangerous, under constant surveillance, plenty already fell through the cracks. 20 seconds after leaving sight of the first camera's view, Rachel appeared in another. She walked out of this one site, heading in a straight line. Michael followed her progress as she continued south for several minutes. He found the closest bus stop on her route, then the next 2 just in case, and watched all the screens. Barely any traffic passed by on the road in the shots, but the occasional car or van drove by as she continued on the sidewalk. She left another camera's view, but then never showed up in another one. Michael waited 20, 40 seconds. Nothing. He investigated the closest cameras to where she vanished. Even rewound the recording to make sure he hadn't missed her. Rachel, however, never appeared in another camera. What's in the one where we lost her? Lewis asked. Michael scanned a map. Shops and other businesses that would all be closed at that time. A few alleys, it seems, but no one's reported a murder here. Lewis breathed out. Looks like you found her last known location. Near a bus stop, a few minutes walk to Nadar. Michael pinged the general location on the map. It was near the edge of Linick's largest administrative district, where some of Talim's largest companies conducted affairs, and even where most of Neria's governmental work was conducted. What happened to her? Where did she go? I'm going to see if I can get out of this festival job, Lewis said. This is way more important. Thanks, Michael said. Until you can, I'm going to try and find. Michael's tablet flashed. Officer Puck had sent a message. Another missing persons report came in. Last contact, the previous night. Michael placed his head in his hands. Actually, I'm going to need to find the other 3 missing persons. Lewis's thin fingers gripped Michael's shoulder. You'll be in here all day, or maybe all week. You're only watching these videos. Is there anything else you can do to help while getting out of this room? He would go stir crazy stuck in this room. He was a windweaver for Titan's sake. He needed some fresh air. Michael stood. There is. Let me know how talking to Fumiko goes. Message, don't call. I'll be with a sensitive contact who can probably help.
Michael knocked on the door, then took a step back, his feet barely sinking into the luxurious carpet. The long corridor was lined with the fancy flooring, golden streams waving about themselves to add variety to the rest of the deep scarlet. Luxurious, even for Michael's taste, and he lived in a mansion coated in marble. Though, for high-rises in downtown Linick, this one was more on the modest side. The tenant he was visiting was wealthy, but not enough to hole up in the highest floor, let alone the most expensive places.
Oh, Michael,
A woman said upon opening the door.
what are you? Uncle Mike!
A loud, excited voice cried. Michael knelt, smiling, just in time for his little niece to dive forward and wrap him in a hug. He gave her a little squeeze back, then lifted her as he stood. He supported her with one arm, and she held herself up by hugging his neck. Hey, Faith, Michael said, hoisting his niece a little higher. How are you?
Good!
Faith exclaimed.
I drew a bug today. Want to see it?
Do I ever? Michael said, walking forward. His way forward, however, was blocked by the woman at the door, Maria, who was stepping into the hallway and closing the door behind her with one hand and lowering her blouse's sleeve with another.
Not that we're not happy to see you, Michael,
Maria began.
What's the occasion?
What? Michael said. Do I need a reason to see the cutest girl in the world? Michael bopped Faith's nose. She leaned back and covered her face with her little hands, giggling. She had the same smile as her mother's, though with darker skin and curlier hair. Maria's tan was impressively brown, just not compared to those on Michael's side of the family. You've got that look, Maria said. Of course he did. She'd seen him many a time working a mission. It wasn't like he was going to hide it from her, but a few more moments of levity would have been nice. Is Dean home? Michael asked. Maria's lips thinned for a moment, her eyes darting to the floor, then she put on a smile.
Come in, sweetie. Daddy and Uncle Mike are going to talk now,
Faith complained, but didn't cling too tightly as Michael brought her back to the floor after he entered the apartment. Maria took Faith away as she called for Dean, announcing Michael's arrival. Michael didn't deem it necessary since his brother was sitting in the expansive living room just down the short hallway. He sat on a wide couch, facing the tall windows which provided a small view of Linick's downtown. More specifically, however, it showed a part of Linick's main administrative district. Just in the corner of the window, Nadar's skyscraper reached to the heavens. "Sup, bro?" Dean said with a grin. Looking over, then tossing aside a tablet and getting up, he clasped hands with Michael, then pulled him into a one-armed hug. "What's got you in the neighborhood?" "Why does everyone assume I'm here for work?" Michael said, pulling back. Dean's grin widened, the unnatural shining white of his teeth only deepening the black of his skin. "All right then, Maria. Get us some beer." "Water for me, please," Michael said. Dean clapped Michael's shoulder. "Knew it. You're on the job." Michael nodded to Dean's deposited tablet. There were plenty of numbers and figures on the screen. "So are you. Unless looking at company portfolios is a hobby now."
Yeah, well, my job barely forces me out of the apartment, so I don't need to worry about proper conduct or any of that shit. Yes, because reading through company accounts is something easily done while inebriated. Exactly! At least it's less boring. Dean plopped on the sofa, then rested his arms on its back. What are you here for? Believe it or not, checking up on you is one reason why I'm here, Michael said, also sitting. Maria came by with a beer in one hand and a glass of cold water in the other. Dean practically snatched the beer away while Michael let her hand the water to him. Then he thanked her. She gave him a small smile, then entered an adjacent room where Faith was jumping on a bed and the door hissed shut. Everything all right here? Dean was too busy taking a long sip of his drink, which he sighed in satisfaction afterwards, to answer immediately. Never better, Dean said. Why? Michael frowned. As well as Maria knew his tells, Michael could read a lot from her little gestures. The pulling of her blouse sleeve was particularly telling. Another time, sadly. I have a job to do. Not too far from here, a young woman got kidnapped last night, Michael said. Damn, that sucks, Dean said. But it's a big city. Crime happens all the time. True, but 3 others were kidnapped too. Triple damn, or quadruple? Whatever. Where were they taken from? No idea yet. But if the other 3 were kidnapped close by... I get it. Look, we don't go out too much. Faith ain't old enough for school yet, and Maria only really goes out to get groceries. Michael leaned forward. Dean sighed. I suppose I can get the groceries from now on. You'd at least be less likely to get snatched from the street. Dean was pulling the bottle to his lips, but paused as Michael spoke. Seriously? She was literally taken off the street? Most likely. Michael explained what he'd found via the recordings. It was then that Dean realized Michael's other reason for paying him a visit. Dean grimaced and slammed his beer down on the coffee table before them. Don't get started with that shit, Dean roared. I'm not part of that world anymore, bro. Haven't even talked to any of them since you and Uncle Benji sent me straight. Michael took a long breath. Dean was only a year younger than Michael, though they couldn't have been more different growing up. Sure, Michael was a wielder, while Dean was not. That was only the start. Michael was a bit of a wise ass, but he'd always gotten good grades and, more or less, done what he'd been told. Dean, however, made more jeering than sarcastic remarks, never did his work, and always stayed out later than Mom and Dad's curfew. It had led to some heated discussions in the house, as well as introducing Dean to a less than savory crowd. In upper school, he'd fallen in hard with that crowd, and nearly lost his freedom, and even life because of it. About 4 years ago, however, not long after he dropped out of upper school, Dean finally began turning his life around. That had been a story by itself. But if it weren't for Michael, their wealthy, albeit very private and shy, Uncle Benji, and the fact that Maria, Dean's girlfriend since middle school, getting pregnant, it was likely Dean would have never gotten his act together. Though there were still moments that gave Michael pause. Like how Dean always grew livid whenever Michael suggested that Dean could have any involvement with his old crowd, it always came through with a lead for Michael. Doesn't mean you don't know anyone who could do this, Michael said. Or that you don't have any ideas. Dean scowled. There a ransom? None. Then looks like you're SOL. Dean, please. I'm not in that shit anymore. Any of the old gang wouldn't want to take anyone without wanting credits anyway. And 4 people is way too much heat. I got nothing for you. Michael looked outside at the city. I'm just trying to make this a safer place for my niece to grow up in. Dean huffed, but deflated. Any weird vehicles? Michael gave his brother a little smile. Despite clearly wanting to talk about anything else, Dean was still willing to try and help him. Like always. That was something Michael could count on Dean for. Nothing suspicious that I noted, Michael said. I don't mean that, Dean said. I'm not talking about big white vans with no windows like the pedos use. I mean anything that looks alright at a look, but then seems weird if you actually think about it. Michael did a little hum as he thought. I didn't see anything, but I only looked at each video once. Check again, just in case, Dean said. If 4 people are missing, all of them from the street, then some idiots probably think they're real clever with their vehicles. What makes them idiots? First off, they're kidnapping people without leaving a ransom note. Means they're likely human traffickers, and these people are in trouble. But if you don't want to get caught, you give desperate people an offer they can't refuse, quietly, and get them to come to you. You don't go driving around and throwing people in the back of cars. It's stupid. If your vehicle ID is right, then I'm happy for them to be as stupid as possible, Michael said, rising. Thanks, Dean. I really appreciate it. Whatever, Dean said, then smiled. Always love having you around, bro. Just prefer it's when it's to play with Faith. Me too, Dean. Sorry, Mike, Lewis's message said. I tried to get out of it, but they won't let me. 3 ardent bishops and the cardinal are coming in, so they'll need extra security. Sorry again, and good luck. I hope it's going well. Michael groaned, bonking his head on the desk. The screens along the Sacred Skies conference room flashed as more video feed played on. His algorithm still at work. He'd spent time looking over the footage of Rachel, noting down every vehicle which passed. Several sedans, a service vehicle, a few trucks, and a van. In the time since leaving his brother's apartment, the algorithm had picked up one more missing person. None of the vehicles around the second person were a match to what was near Rachel. And now, no other eyes would be allowed to give him much help on this, because they were all playing security for some of the Ardent sect's most important leaders. The leaders, Michael could easily note, who all had extensive security already and were powerful wielders in their own right, with plenty of training to defend themselves. Michael's wristband buzzed again. Another missing person was reported. Details soon followed. Michael, however, leaned so far back in his chair it nearly tipped over. Now, he had to find 5 people? Rachel had been taken near Nadar, and the second victim had only been taken 7 blocks northwest of her. Both were in Linick's main administrative district. What if... Michael narrowed the scope, displaying as many cameras as he could within the administration district. That ought to help. If I'm right, then I'll find these people in no time. Michael closed his eyes and sighed. The constant staring at the screens was weighing on his eyes. He could afford to keep his eyes away from the monitors for a moment, right? Besides, the algorithm would notify him if it picked up anything important. Michael's eyes flung open and he jolted forward. Several alarms were blaring on the screens around him, and a little blue light blinked from his wristband, showing his missed notifications. Michael's mouth dropped open as he looked at the time. It was already after 8 in the morning. He'd fallen asleep. And in that time, according to Officer Puck, 2 more people had been kidnapped. Michael shook his head. What was going on in this city? He checked the screens. The algorithm had picked up the other 3 people he'd been looking for. He put in the information of the other 2 missing persons, then watched the appropriate feed. In the footage for 2 missing persons flagged by the algorithm, only one type of vehicle was constant: a service vehicle. That's 3 of the 5 where a service vehicle was seen around the time they went missing. Michael stood looking over the data, and everyone's gone missing within a mile of each other. With the narrowed scope, one of the new missing persons showed up in the algorithm. As he watched through the feed taking notes, the other one popped up. Both had a service vehicle nearby just before they disappeared. Michael took screenshots of each of the service vans. None seemed out of the ordinary. They appeared to be simple city service vehicles. A camera picked up one of their license plates, though. Michael ran it through his system, but it came back with nothing. Son of... Michael charged from the room. He had the best lead yet, and he couldn't waste it. Winds rushed from Michael's shrinking lungs, all to support him as he flew from rooftop to rooftop. His gift allowed him the miracle of flight for as long as he could hold his breath. As a talented windweaver, in his oh-so-humble opinion, he was capable of sustained flight for just shy of 3 minutes, if he didn't have to fly so fast. What his gift didn't allow was invisibility. Normally that didn't matter. He was entirely fine with Linick citizens watching him fly around the city. Now, however, he was tailing a vehicle and did not want to get noticed. It had taken only a couple hours after leaving Sacred Skies Manor to get to the administrative district and find the service vehicle he was looking for. The first 2 vans he'd found actually had been legitimate, given how their license plate came up during a search, but the third had given him nothing. From what little Michael could tell, only 3 people were in the front of the van, though there were no windows to show what was in the body of the vehicle. So Michael followed it, keeping a short distance away and flying among the rooftops to hopefully stay out of sight. He'd figured something like this could happen, so he'd worn gray to match the buildings and pale blue to try and blend into the sky. He'd gotten away with this form of tailing before on previous missions. Thankfully, people usually didn't look up, but he had to be prepared. Usually was not never. Michael landed atop a building and peered over the edge. There were a few people on the sidewalk, and the service vehicle slowed. Were they preparing another abduction? They were just stopping at a red light. A few minutes later, they drove down a smaller street. Had they found someone taking the alley out of sight of most people wandering around? Unlikely, as the alley was empty. This can't be good for my heart. Michael grimaced as he continued following the vehicle. If the people inside tried to abduct someone, Michael would swoop in to stop them. Then he'd interrogate them and drop them off at the police station. If, however, they returned to their base of operations, that potentially lead Michael to the masterminds behind this plot. Any of their victims are probably having a worse time than me. Gotta stop complaining. Michael followed the vehicle through several streets until it reached a small warehouse. The street was a little unkempt, which was strange considering how close it was to Linick Spire, the largest skyscraper in the city, where the governor practically lived, and where most of the city's governmental affairs occurred. The tall edifice loomed high in the sky, almost casting this part of the city in its shadow. That was probably something the thugs of this region enjoyed, so people would keep their eyes off of their nefarious business. The warehouse had a large garage door that rattled open. In a garage that size, Michael had expected at least a dozen other vehicles, yet it was practically devoid of anything, let alone vans. The garage door began to close as the service van's front doors opened. Michael's lungs depressed further as he flew closer to the warehouse. It had some high windows which primarily let light into the building, but also gave Michael a vantage to see into the building. 3 men walked out of the lone service van, stretching and speaking words Michael couldn't make out. Michael pressed forward. If they opened the trunk and dragged bodies out from there, that would give him plenty of reason to storm the building and put an end to this. The 3 men, however, did nothing of the sort. They walked in the opposite direction of the van's trunk, entering a room where they vanished from Michael's view. Michael growled, then landed on the neighboring building's roof. He hid his face behind his hands. Glancing about, there were no security cameras around. Michael sighed in relief. He wouldn't want to tip them off that someone was onto them. What now? Michael mumbled. He could continue waiting to see if other vehicles would join that one in the garage, or to see if they eventually would go back out for another round. That would be smart, but he couldn't just twiddle his thumbs and do nothing while he waited. Michael's eyes widened. He jotted down the warehouse's address, then pulled out a list of contacts. Some were higher-ups in the governor's office. Others had better access to businesses, both local and nationwide, while plenty more were accustomed to roaming the streets by night. Surely at least one of those contacts could give him the information he needed. At least one of them could explain who or what company owned this building. With that information, Michael would be that much closer to solving this case and finding those people, unless they were already killed or moved across the country. Stomach in a knot, Michael made his first call.
With how much trouble this could get me in, I should ask for at least 10 free jobs.
Michael's contact, a man named Caleb Brooks, said. Caleb was a property manager who often worked closely with not only the governor, but also the president of Talon. He was well respected in the field and had access to information about every government-owned building in the whole province of Neria, not just the city of Linick. As for the property owned by the private citizens or businesses, it wouldn't take him long to get information about them. Caleb wasn't exactly a frequent contact, as Michael didn't have too many jobs which related to buildings, but at least once a year for the last 5, they'd gotten together and helped one another in whatever the other required. Caleb aided Michael for a job, while Michael occasionally did off-the-books investigative work for Caleb. "Why's that?" Caleb said. "This job's more serious than most of my other ones. The governor's office should be completely fine with you helping me."
Should be,
Caleb said, then took a sip from his coffee. Caleb had been the first call Michael made, but he hadn't been the last. Caleb had said he'd looked into the building's information, then nearly an hour passed before he contacted Michael again. Michael had spent that time discussing with other contacts when Caleb sent him another message informing him to meet Caleb at a cafe near the spire in half an hour. It had forced Michael away from his surveillance of the building, but he'd get right back to it after this little meeting with Caleb, which shouldn't take too long. Both of them only ordered a small cup of coffee. A part of Michael wanted to get more. It was a brisk winter's morning, and flying around the rooftops hadn't exactly been warming. Treats and warmth, however, were far from the most important things on Michael's mind right now. Michael's wristband buzzed. His guildmate Jeb was trying to reach him. Michael ignored it. He'd contact Jeb again after this meeting as he flew back to that warehouse. "So, what's the problem?" Michael asked. Caleb frowned, the wrinkles on his dark cheeks deepening.
"You're not the only wielder I've helped for jobs. Been doing this a long time. Peacekeepers and guild members have been coming to me for years looking for information about a building here and there, even the police."
"I'm aware." Caleb leaned forward.
"Today, while looking into your request, is the first time I got pushback."
"I find that hard to believe," Michael said. "I'm sure a lot of people don't want their information given to random people, even if it is to a wielder."
"Not what I'm talking about. I mean, this time is the first time I've been told to stop by my bosses."
Michael took a sip of his own coffee to give himself a moment to think. Oddly enough, he didn't feel the warmth from the drink this time around. "Any idea why?" Michael asked.
"Not exactly, but..."
Caleb glanced around, taking another sip.
"There are stirrings in the office. This business you're trying to stop is getting talked about. People are noticing the high rate of sudden kidnappings and rumors are buzzing throughout the spire. But we got an official memo an hour ago telling us that anyone who is found discussing the kidnappings will be sent home early without pay."
"Okay, that's weird, but I wouldn't exactly call that pushback."
"I'm not finished. I still got the information on the warehouse, since that's not talking about the kidnappings exactly. Not 10 minutes after that, my boss came into my office, explained that this is above my pay grade and I can't look further into this or share what I've learned."
Michael's brow furrowed. "You're not implying the government had something to do with this, are you?" Caleb leaned back and waved his hands.
"No, not at all. My boss said the governor's peacekeepers are gathering evidence and do not want any civilians interfering with their work."
"The governor's peacekeepers are playing bodyguard for the festival next week."
"They can have more than one mission."
"But they have to follow the orders they're given. Unless told to act, they won't."
"I'm not here to stir up trouble between you and the peacekeepers."
"So what are you here for? Trying to convince me that I shouldn't get involved? Just leave it to the peacekeepers?"
"Officially, yes."
Caleb took another sip as Michael's wristband buzzed again. Jeb was still trying to call him. Michael, frowning, ignored him. "Unofficially?" Michael asked.
"Those kidnappings are happening close to home," Caleb said. "Rumor is it doesn't matter your sex or your age. People as young as 20 and as old as 70 have been taken. Since I fall a little past the middle of that, I'm in danger too. And my daughter works at the Spire. Just got back to work from maternity leave. My granddaughter's the cutest little thing. She needs her mama, and I'd like her granddaddy to be in her life too."
Caleb leaned forward again.
"From what I can see, it looks like the peacekeepers have firmly planted their hands beneath their asses. I want these people caught, in case my daughter or me are the next victims."
Michael had joined Sacred Skies for many reasons. None of them included altruism. Over the years, however, Michael had found a purpose and a sense of pride in helping others. Whenever there was a job that truly made a difference in someone's life, Michael had always felt most fulfilled. These were real people whose lives were currently upending. Real fear that they could be next, and no one was trying to help them. No one but Michael. "Tell me what you know," Michael said, "and I'll go get these guys." Caleb's smile was small.
The warehouse belongs to a relatively small conglomerate called Mercurial Path, which owns a few companies. Ross & Power, Grant Incorporated, Seco Research, and Dustin Cosmetics. To my knowledge, each of these businesses have worked out of this warehouse.
Michael took note of all those companies. Aside from Dustin Cosmetics, the other three primarily worked in technology manufacturing, which ranged from microchips in certain devices to weapons. They were on the list of smaller, less profitable tech businesses, as compared to Nadar and Trolson Tech. Still, they were relatively successful, to Michael's knowledge. What was the purpose of kidnapping people? Looked like they'd have to go around and interview them to find out. Michael said, Hold on. I think I have to take this. His wristband had buzzed. Jeb was trying to reach him once again. Michael finally answered. What? Michael said. I'm a little busy. Yeah, about that, Jeb said, sounding a little awkward. Strange. The guy normally oozed with confidence, even when delivering bad news. You're out on that job, right? Yes, Michael said, and I'm really busy with it. That's kind of why I'm calling. Look, you need to come back to the manor. Michael frowned. Can't do that. I got some info that will... Legally, Mike, Jeb said. You legally need to come back to Sacred Skies. There's a lawyer here who says she needs to talk with you. Like yesterday. She's got documents and everything. Michael's heart clenched, as did his teeth. It was through them he said, I'll be right over. I'm going to make this brief, the lawyer said, sitting in the very same chair Clarice had sat in yesterday, begging for Michael to save her daughter. My name is Celine Hicks Esquire. She flashed her credentials, showing she was a partner at Austin & Polk. Michael didn't hide his frown. That was the largest firm in Linick, and boasted the highest percentage of case victories in the province. Nothing good could come with them involved. Michael Jones, Michael said, sitting across from her. Sacred Skies member, Windweaver. I'm aware of who you are. Are you aware you've been conducting an illegal investigation? Nothing to be aware of, since I have been completely open with my investigation. I have gone through the police and only used the privileges allowed me by the law. Not as of 7:36 this morning. Celine expanded a tablet and slid it over the desk. A whole damned contract shown on the screen. As you can see, this matter is entirely being done by local peacekeepers. Any and all investigations into these sudden and tragic disappearances will be conducted by them. Any non-compliance on your part will be deemed an act of rebellion against the peacekeepers. Said rebellion will be punished accordingly. Michael glared. Are you threatening me? Despite her being a skinny pale woman who likely would only reach Michael's chin while in heels, despite the fact that she, an average civilian, was face to face with the wielder, whom most people considered semi-divine, Celine's gaze never faltered. If anything, the corner of her mouth twitched up, as if she was enjoying this pissing match, which meant that, in her mind, she would win it. I would never dare, Celine said. I am but a messenger, explaining the wills of my clients and employer. Michael glowered at the tablet. The contract had been signed by the governor himself. So much for being too busy with the festival. Celine reached over and snatched the tablet away, then stood. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation in this matter. It can't end like this, Michael found himself saying. Oh, it will not. Do you not remember? The local peacekeepers will handle it. They have greater resources at their disposal to swiftly handle this issue than you ever could. Those victims will be in better hands with the peacekeepers. Anger stoked Michael's heart. He also rose, standing a whole head over her as he'd figured he would. What hands? The peacekeepers are too busy being bodyguards than investigators. The whole time I've been working this case, I haven't seen or heard from them once. Our leaders know what they're doing. They have prioritized the most important missions first. So a festival is more important than the lives of the common person? Celine's blue eyes narrowed. That is outside either of our pay grades. This conversation is done, as it is going nowhere.
Have a good rest of your day, Michael Jones of Sacred Skies.
Wait, Michael said as Celine turned to leave. She stopped at the door. I have information. Data that maybe the Peacekeepers don't have yet. If I can't work the case alone, let me at least contact them and provide them with everything I have. Celine turned her head over her shoulder. Her expression suggested she was watching a child who thought he could end world hunger by hosting a bake sale.
That is entirely unnecessary, Celine said. The Peacekeepers have all the information they need. And as I stated previously, anything you do from here on out will be considered an act of rebellion against the Peacekeepers and will be handled accordingly.
Without another word, Celine exited the room, leaving Michael alone in silence. What are you doing? Michael asked an hour later. An hour of stewing in his own anger, frustration, and disappointment in himself. An hour of silently raging and racking his brain to figure out a way to complete his mission. An hour to realize that he would, in fact, let all those people down. As Michael was very well aware at this point, the government had eyes almost everywhere in this city. They could even access Sacred Sky's security feed if they pushed hard enough for it. It wouldn't be a surprise if they had an algorithm set to examine Michael's face and body features to track his movement in the city, just in case he got any funny ideas and tried to investigate the missing persons. He could always fly around the pockets of places that didn't have any cameras, but then he'd likely get a warrant to find his wristband and tablet's location. He could always fly around without his tech, but then he wouldn't know exactly where the government cameras were. No, this was likely the end of his missing persons investigation, a job which wouldn't begin again until the festival had finished. In 5 days.
I'm closing your case,
Hasi said, standing beneath the middle screen on the wall, which was nearby Kayla and the receptionist desk. The right screen showed all the jobs that had yet to be accepted by a guild member, which was steadily growing since most Sacred Skies members were working the festival, and the left screen displayed the jobs that had been completed, which also displayed the level of difficulty for the job, and the member or members who'd completed it. It made for a friendly competition among the guild, and was something Michael was always proud to see filled out. His own name stood proudly at the top, from the mission he'd worked with Jordan, which had felt like it was weeks ago. The middle screen, however, presented the ongoing missions. It was so that the guild members and clients could see what they were currently working on, and whether they would be too busy to take on or accept any other jobs. 12 of Sacred Sky's 15 members were working the festival job. Hasi and Jeb were working a mission that apparently would bring them into the mountains north of Linick for a few days. And Michael alone was working the missing persons case. Or supposed he wasn't working anymore.
Boss wants it done soon,
Hasi said.
I didn't know how long you would take in there, so...
Stop, Michael said as Hasi was about to press her tablet. I got it. Hasi sighed and handed Michael her tablet, with which she had been about to end the job. Michael's finger hovered over the screen.
Michael?
Hasi said. Lips thin, Michael activated his wristband, found what he was searching for, and connected it to the middle screen. Rachel's picture, where she smiled so brightly in the park, appeared in between the job title and Michael's name.
What are you doing?
Hasi asked. Job's not done yet, Michael said.
You can't work it anymore,
Hasi said.
Boss said that.
We don't get to brush this under the rug, Michael said. Rachel's still missing. Clarice doesn't even have closure. All those other people taken are still gone. There's nothing about this job that's closed, Hasi, so until those people are found, this job is still ongoing.
You're going to get into a lot of trouble.
Fumiko won't push back too hard on this.
I meant with the law.
I won't break the law, I'll just
what? Look at her face every day? Torture yourself knowing that you can't do anything about it?
Michael's hands clenched. If that's what it takes to make this place acknowledge that this job wasn't just a breath in the breeze...
Michael
returned her tablet. Don't close the job. Every time you do, I'll reopen it, again and again until she's found. Michael hadn't expected much backlash from Fumiko. He had, however, expected some. Instead, Fumiko had seen him staring at Rachel's picture a few hours later. She'd been more supportive than he'd expected. She'd only pleaded Michael visibly do nothing illegal, both outside the manor and within. She basically confirmed his suspicions about being watched with that. then simply left him to be. So that had gone over far better than he'd expected. Sadly, talking to Clarice about the case had been worse. As she babbled, confused about why this was happening, Michael couldn't do much more than apologize. "I'm sorry," Michael had said repeatedly. After she collected herself, Clarice shook her head, sniffling. She said,
"It's not your fault, wondrous Windweaver. Thank you for taking this so seriously."
That took the breath from his lungs faster than his gift. He'd only started this job to get away from the Peacekeepers at the festival. He'd even believed the worst of Clarice, and that Rachel was simply trying to avoid contacting her. If he'd taken this more seriously from the start, could he have found her before the governor's office stopped him? That feeling drew him into a haze. Over the next several days, Michael continued to hear report after report of more people going missing. Every day, he stared at Rachel's picture in the Sacred Skies atrium, counting the minutes until this damned Thanksgiving festival was over. Then, finally, the day of the festival, Michael woke late. Both Jeb and Hassie were returning from their missions in the mountains, while Lewis was resting in the large hot tub near the entrance. "Isn't the festival happening, like, now?" Michael asked. Lewis craned his head back to look at Michael. "Worked double time this morning, so they gave me a nice little break. Thought I'd spend it in the hot tub, you know? All that work this week just to be allowed a break during the actual festival? Well, it wasn't that easy. I owe a couple people I'd really rather not be in the debt to some favors. But I wanted to get back to see you. Got something to tell you." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You do?" "Yeah. But get your bathing suit on and get in here. It's awkward looking at you from this angle. Just tell me now. I want to see you more relaxed when we talk. When's the last time you took a dip?" "Since before the Rachel job." "Exactly. Go, suit, back now." Michael grumbled, but listened. It felt almost offensive as he lowered into the hot water. Why would he get to rest, sign contentment, and loosen his taut muscles while, by now, more than 20 people had been kidnapped in the last week? "So, what did you want to tell me?" Michael said. "It's actually something Officer Puck wanted me to tell you," Lois said, voice very low. "Clarice, the woman who came to you about her missing daughter, has gone missing too." Michael's heart clenched. How? From the file, she didn't live or work anywhere close to the administrative district where everyone had been kidnapped. What was she doing out there? Michael's breathing came labored. What if she'd been looking for her daughter? Without any help from the police or peacekeepers, what if she'd taken initiative to try and find her daughter? What if, because Michael could no longer do anything, he had gotten her kidnapped too? A peacekeeper entered through Sacred Sky's large open doors. Michael had never seen this one before. He was tall, but not quite Michael's height, and he clearly had ample amounts of muscle beneath his peacekeeper uniform. He gazed around the atrium and the artwork on the wall with a gleam in his dark folded eyes, ones which seemed jovial and juvenile. It was the exact opposite look that his professional uniform and tightly bunned black hair gave off. He walked past the pool and made his way to the counter, where Kayla was talking to a client. Just before there, both Hassie and Jeb were looking at the new job openings, right in front of where Michael had kept Rachel's picture. The peacekeeper began talking to Hassie and Jeb. Then Michael turned away. Who the hell was this peacekeeper barging into his home and pretending to be impressed? Peacekeepers had always looked down on guilds. Peacekeepers were the ones who always threw their superiority around and belittled the work guilds did. And now it was the peacekeepers who'd allowed so many people to get kidnapped while forcing Michael to sit back and watch it all happen. Because of peacekeepers, Mother had followed daughter and Clarice was missing just like Rachel. "I'm sorry, man," Lewis said, "but it'll get better tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, the peacekeepers will figure this all out. We shouldn't have to wait for tomorrow." Michael lowered his face toward the water and closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. It's not like someone is going to show up and do something about it. Miracles don't just fall from the sky like that.